We are live. Hello. Hi, everybody. I'm Sherry Reichert Belul, author of Say It Now and a high performance coach. I'm here with Rachael Wolff. Hello, Rachael.
Hi.
It's always good to see you.
You too.
So Rachael has been very game this morning. Just a couple hours ago, it dropped in for me that it's Groundhog's Day and that many of us have seen that movie that Bill Murray is in. I think it's called Groundhog's Day, isn't it?
Groundhog Day.
And it occurred to me that there are some amazing life lessons in that movie. And I just texted Rachael and said, "Did you see that movie? Do you want to talk about it?" And you were like, "Sure." So Rachael, why don't you start us off? Like, what do you think is one of the biggest lessons from that movie, Groundhog Day?
So for me, it's watching him repeat the cycle of insanity over and over until he awakens to realize he's in that cycle of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And yeah, that's
Absolutely, right?
yeah, and it just shows it's like once we break the cycle, realize that we don't have to be stuck in the same cycle over and over again. It's literally perspective.
Yes, 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 1,000 times over, right? Like, and I love what you're saying about that because it's like for me, and I think for most people that's so striking, right? That every day it's the same thing. It's the same thing. So I know you have a really powerful story in your own life about breaking that perspective, breaking that cycle of another day, same thing. Oh,
Yeah.
tell us.
Well, for me, my cycle of insanity had to do with love. It had to do with how I treated love. It had to do with how I gave love and received love. And it was all because I never consciously defined love. So my cycle of insanity was saying my worth was in other people. So when I gave, I would give to gain worth. I would give with an expectation back that I was going to get worth from what I was giving. And I did that with myself. I did that with others. I thought, abusive relationships were love because they told me so. And it's like that love hurt and all of that. And that was just that cycle of insanity that I just kept reliving over and over, and I kept expecting a different result every time. And when I would give, I would end up being so depleted and feeling completely worn out from giving, feeling like that doormat, that everybody was walking on. And so for me, it was consciously divining love. And I remember looking up the definition and finding, it love is patient, love is kind, something I always heard at weddings.
Right.
And I never saw it as the definition of love, like going on and reading the whole piece of it and going, that's not what I'm giving out, and it's not what I'm getting back.
Yeah.
So when I broke that and looked at that definition of love and go, am I treating myself this way? And then am I feeling this when I'm giving to others? And that's actually how I learned to live from a loving place, was in that moment. It was such a huge moment when I did it that it started transforming everything in my life, like everything in my life. It was amazing.
Well, and I'm struck because, of course, I know you, and so I know that phrase "from a loving place," right? Like that is it. That's your work in the world. That's where you live from. That's who you are. And so I'm so struck by that. How long ago was this when all of this transformation happened?
That was about 12 years ago that I looked up the definition. It
Yeah.
was 12 years, and then I went after that year, I went to school full time and really got into Martin Luther King and studying everything he did. And everything he did was from a loving place, like an authentically loving place. And now that I had that definition, I looked at everybody and how they were giving and knowing that that's how I wanted to give.
Yeah.
So, and so then I could really see the role models in my life for giving love. by that definition, because if it had any kind of I love you buts, or I expect this but
Yeah.
like, that's not the definition.
Well, hey, also,
You can hold it.
all right, make it easy for us.
Okay.
So those of us that are thinking about Bill Murray today, right? So Bill Murray's story of that character of day after day after day, same thing, same cycle of insanity. What's the parallel? What's the parallel in the transformation that happened for you?
So for me, it was pretty much doing the same thing he did, realizing I didn't have to live that way, like in that misery, like, because my perspectives were creating misery for me.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to live that way anymore. And by switching my perspective, my actions changed, my thoughts changed, the people around me responded differently to me. Same exact thing happened in Groundhog Day. When he changed, everything around you changes, because whatever we put out, we get back.
Oh, Rachel.
So if we have that, his sourpuss face that he started with, that's what we're going to get back. And that's how I was too. When you are living depleted, like you feel like a doormat, you live depleted.
Yeah.
And to realize that I didn't have to be a doormat, healthy boundaries, and I'm accepting how to love myself and how to love others from that authentic place of love changed. That's why it changed everything, and it changed the people in my life. And you're one of the biggest blessings to my life, that, when I feel like when our energies connect, it's like
I know.
it expands.
I don't even care what we're talking about. I just love to be in your company, even though we've never met in person, which I have to remind myself sometimes. But yeah, so I love this. I love that it's like the first piece that you said is that understanding and awareness that we don't have to live in that same old space, whether it's, just kind of like, flatlining, or, it might be abuse, or it might be, real depression or trauma or grief or whatever, but that we do have a choice. And I think that's, to me, what was so poignant about that movie. And I love that the movie was light and fun, because it allowed us to kind of get these messages in a way without it being you should, or
Yep.
And you're helping me to understand as well, which I hadn't connected until we started talking right before we went live, which is my own story, different than yours, but my Groundhog Day was this sort of self-hate that I was living under, this sort of the expectations were so high, and I was so disappointed in myself day after day after day, right? It was just this ongoing wake up, be disappointed in myself. What's wrong with me? Why can't I do? And the same thing that you said. So it's like going out into the world. I was that, maybe it didn't have the same grouchy face as Bill Murray, but mine would probably look depressed or anxious,
Yeah, and it's funny because some of us hide it well. Like, as a young person, people never knew I was depressed. So I get that. Like, you can hide behind it, but your energy still projects it.
Right. I think you and I have connected on this before too, right? Like, because same with me, I'm really good at, hiding it. But even if no one on the outside does know, we know, right? Like, we know. And I was just delighted at this prospect of talking to you. I feel like there's a second piece that we haven't gotten to. Do you know what it is? Oh, yes, I do. Just think of me. Thank goodness. The first piece is that idea that it's like we can make a choice not to go out into the world with the same old, to change our perspective, like you said. But the other piece that really struck me about the movie and in my own life is when I got outside of my own, this feeling of everything being about me and what's going on in my life and why am I such a disappointment to myself. And when I could look around and actually start loving people, this goes back to what you were saying, that's what Bill Murray did, right? like all of a sudden he started doing all of these kind acts. And the way that that shifts things, and I know you are someone, you're constantly, you know, whether it's for yourself or others, offering love. Tell me about that piece.
Well, you know, part of what I do with writing, I write a daily blog, Daily Aligning with Love, Abundance, and Peace. And, you know, a big piece of that is to make sure I stay aligned daily. Like, even
Mm-hmm.
if it's in that day, that's the time frame that I'm aligned for, is the time that I write it. I
Yes.
mean, it's however I have to connect. And the fact that I know that, you know, because of people's comments or people writing me from what I write, that it's helping other people too. Just that reminder to align with love, abundance, peace over fear, lack, and separation. Just if you could just get those concepts in your head daily, it helps. It just helps to question where you're aligning, you know? And
Yes.
I love that I can help people do that, because I do have the Facebook page from A Loving Place too, where I post these every day. So to see that it's getting to people and just helping somebody just maybe see a slightly different perspective, because
Yeah.
it's just it tends to be what I've recognized in myself is it tends to be just a little shift, and you never know where that shift's going to come from,
Ah, I love
you
that.
know. And so it's just trying to help people find that whatever little shift they need to help them align so that they'll live better that day, you know. And that makes me feel great to know that I'm putting that out in the world.
And I just want to say hi to Bonnie. I saw she said hi to us. And Bonnie, feel free to comment if you have any experience with your own sort of like waking up in a Groundhog Day life, you know. And I was just thinking, Rachel, when you were talking about like it can be so small, right? It's a small alignment. I was looking at there's just a short video snippet about the movie Groundhog Day. And in one of the scenes, it's one where, you know, he's finally at that point where he's doing things differently and he brings coffee to people. It's just a tiny, right? It's just the simplest of things. But like I got a little teary at that scene because it's that small,
Yeah.
right? Because it's not the coffee. It's not the coffee, it's the act of seeing that there's someone else in the world and how can I bring a tiny moment of joy, right?
Well, and it's funny because I just saw, with Valentine's Day coming up, I just saw a little Pinterest thing with people putting hearts on their kids' doors, of like kind of like what you do with the love list,
Right.
putting those hearts on the doors. And I'm like, ooh, I like that.
Yes. It's that simple, right? And it just
Yeah.
doesn't have to. I know some people make a big heart out of all the little, you know, things they love, but it can be one thing, right? It can be just a little post-it note to someone saying one thing we love. And I love that you brought that in because it's. I always like to talk about the love lists,
Yes. Well, I love your love list.
but again, like so. I'm so grateful to you for popping on. Is there anything else that's dropping in for you about? It may have been like for me, it was a long time ago that I saw that movie. I don't know for you, but anything else that feels like it wants to be said?
Well, and I think, you know, the biggest thing is we have to realize it ourselves. Like Bill Murray in the movie, he had to realize it himself. You know, he had to come to the awakening. Nobody can force us to come to an awakening. It's our timing. It's our journey. It's whatever, you know, we have to be willing to look at ourselves. If we don't like what we see, if we don't like our patterns, if we don't like the way our lives are going, we have to be able to look inward without blaming outward, just to see
Yes.
what's going on.
No. Go
And
ahead.
I think for him, you know, that was a big part of his, you know, he wanted to blame everything else of why his life looked the way it did, instead of taking a look at what he was doing. And it's such an important lesson to that responsibility and accountability. When we show that we're responsible and accountable for the energy we're putting out into the world, then we get to change that energy. We give
Oh,
ourselves the power to change that.
I know. And it can sound maybe like cliche or too simple, but I often think that the reason things sound cliche is because they're so true, right? They're true and they're repeated over and over. But and that was my experience too, just what you said, that it was that I just thought, something big needed to change. In my case, it was more like I needed to make something happen on the outside. But really what you were saying, what I love so much is it's really just about, like you said, a simple perspective change. When I walk out this door, how do I walk out in a brand new day, in a brand new place, living the life I most want to live?
Well, and we have to remember that it's not always so easy. Like, he got a lot of tries. He got to try different things, new things over and over and over for the same day. And we have to remember that it takes us a long time to get where we were in our thinking. So to undo that thinking and restart it, we have to give ourselves a break. We have to go, I want to do this for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I want to look at things differently. One of my friends, this is my favorite. One of my friends once, when I was in my crap, she said, get up on a chair, stand up on a chair on the other side of the room and look around and see the different perspective. And it's just remembering in a moment. And as long as that moment can last for you, and then you just keep remembering to do it as much as you can, and let it develop. But don't, beating ourselves up for what we're not doing will keep us stuck in the same pattern. It is self-abuse.
Love is patient.
Yes. And to remember, we have to treat ourselves with that love. And it's funny because the one thing people sometimes say is, it says love is not self-seeking. It's like they're talking about ego. That's different than self-love. Self-love, self-care, all essential. It's that putting our oxygen mask in ourselves first to be able to help others. It's how we give authentically. So it's different.
I'm so glad that I asked you that question and that you brought that in, because to me, that seems like the perfect place for us to close out what we're talking about, which is, to make it so kind for ourselves, to know that we can go out and try. And just like Bill Murray had, I don't know how many hundreds of days he got to try it over, that we get to do that, and to allow ourselves that. And I also love the levity of the movie and who he is, and to bring that into it. But your point about just try it for 10 minutes, like maybe that's what we leave people with right now. Like, next time you walk out on the street or wherever, I know we're all sheltering in place with our masks on, but to be in that place of love and come from that for ourselves and for the people we meet, as simple as that.
I fully agree. I'm telling everybody who's listening, it really did change my life. I have been doing self-help work for over 30 years, and just that simple thing changed my life bigger than every book I ever read.
Wow. Thank you. Speaking of books, I know we're not here to promote your book, but I just see it behind you. Do you want to just tell people the name of your book?
Letters from a Better Me, How Becoming an Empowered Woman Transforms the World.
Yay. Rachel, thank you for being so game and doing this at the very last minute and bringing in such great things to think about. I love you. I love being in conversation with you, and we'll do it again and again.
I love you too, and I'm so grateful you asked me.
Mwah. Happy Groundhog Day.
You too.